Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm really happy to be sitting down in this location again, just talking to you about books, because it's been a while. I have been on the road for like the past 2.5 weeks, but now I'm back and I can finally, record content for you again. Today, of course, we will be talking about all the books I read in May. Now, as I just said, I was traveling for like half of May, so I didn't read as much as I usually do, but still, I managed to read, I think, 7 books, so that's still pretty decent. Let's get right into it. The first book I read this month will come as a surprise, I think, at least if you are familiar with my taste on this channel, because I read Sally Rooney's Conversations with Friends. Now, I have been more than vocal on my channel about not being the biggest Sally Rooney fan. I have read both Normal People and Beautiful World, Where Are You? And I was just like not super obsessed with it. Like, Normal People is okay, but Beautiful World, Where Are You? I actually actively disliked, I would say. Now, why then did I pick up the final book? Or like, it's her first book, but it's like the last out of her 3 books that I have not yet read, so the final books, so to say. Why have I decided to pick this up and read it, even though I didn't really like her style in the other 2 books? That is mainly because of the Clockwork Reader. She has, in the past couple of weeks, uploaded 2 videos, and the first she read Normal People, and just like me, she spoke up about not liking it. And if you know booktube, then you know finding another book YouTuber who does not love Sally Rooney is like winning the lottery. Honestly, try to find one. They're all obsessed with her. And I feel really lonely in my little corner of booktube over here. So I watched her video, heard her not loving Normal People, and I just felt the connection with her. But then in a different video, she read, just like because of the concept of the video, she read Conversations with Friends, also by Sally Rooney, and actually talked about how she was surprised that she kind of liked this, even though she did not like Normal People. So that basically inspired me. You know what? I'm gonna give Sally Rooney yet another try. 3rd time's a charm, you know what I say? And so I read Conversations with Friends as the first book in May. Now, right off the bat, I can say that I think out of all of Sally Rooney's works, I like this the best, but that doesn't in itself say that much, because I really did not like the other books that much. I mean, as I just said, Normal People was okay, but the other one I really didn't like. So I guess, yes, I did like this the best out of all of Sally Rooney's works. This is about 21-year-old Frances, and she has her best friend called Bobby, but they also used to be girlfriends, but now they're not together anymore, but at one point they lived together. So of course there's that dynamic, though there's actually not a lot of problems going on in that relationship. They actually are pretty cool with one another. But then they get to know this other married couple, Melissa and Nick, and Frances starts having an affair with Nick, and it is kind of insinuated that there are at least some sexy vibes between Bobby and Melissa as well. So you have all of that conundrum going on, basically a whole lot of very complicated relationships. Because Frances is a 21-year-old college student, I guess maybe I found her the most relatable out of all of Sally Rooney's main characters, even though I know in Normal People, I forgot their names, Connor, I think his name is, and I don't remember the girl's name. They are also uni students, but we follow them over like a larger chunk of time. Like they start off as high school students, and then at the end they're already like working or doing like their masters, PhDs, etc. So we follow them over like a long span of time. So it's like different ages we're supposed to like be communicating with, so to say. I think that contributed to me liking this book the best out of all of Sally Rooney's works, because the main character, just like those bare basics, like her being 21-year-old and a college student, that's kind of rather similar to my living situation, and I guess that's why I connected with her the most. Also, I mean, Frances, she has her own problems, let's not brush over that, but I think she might still be the most normal, the healthiest out of all of Sally Rooney's main characters. I think like in Normal People, the main characters are definitely, they are very messed up. They have tons of problems that they should be working through. In Beautiful World, Where Are You? Definitely one of them, like Alice, she was also really like, there was a ton of stuff to be unraveled there. The other person, she seemed kind of normal too, the other female protagonist in Beautiful World, Where Are You? But considering everything, Frances was a pretty normal 21-year-old college student, of course still being in the middle of adulting, figuring stuff out for herself, what she wants to do with her life, figuring out romance stuff, friendship stuff, and all of that. She has a very complicated relationship with her parents as well. So there's all of that. I guess she was like in herself still the most normal, the most relatable out of all of Sally Rooney's characters. So that's why I like the book the best. Not that she was like 100% normal or like 100% relatable, but still, I actually think it's a good thing if you cannot at least like 100% relate to any of Sally Rooney's characters, because all of the characters in her books are, at least on some level, very messed up. They have a lot of issues and things they should be working through, but are like actively like repressing, and they have tons of really strange, weird, toxic, unhealthy relationships with like everyone in their lives. That's kind of like something I don't really like about Sally Rooney. I guess obviously that's what other people really appreciate about her work. These like very complicated and toxic relationships that are the center point of all of these stories. But I don't really dig that all that much. And I can also, as I think, luckily not relate to it all that much, because I don't have relationships in my life that are at least that toxic and that weird and that unhealthy. So I don't know, Sally Rooney, I mean, she's still not my favorite author. I still don't completely get the hype around her work, but I guess at least I like this the best out of all her work so far. Do with that what you want. Okay, next up, I read Loveless by Alice Osman. Obviously, like any other human being on this planet, I watched the Heartstopper series when it dropped like the end of April, the beginning of May. I watched it together with a friend. It was so cute, so heartwarming, very much just like a feel-good little mini-series. We really loved it, and I had already had this sitting on my TBR shelf when we were watching it, and because we liked the series so much, I finally decided to actually pick this up and read my first Alice Osman book. I had heard a lot about this, mainly the fact that it stars an asexual protagonist, and I've never read a book starring an asexual character, not even to mention the protagonist. So I was really intrigued by that, so I picked this book up, even though then it took me some time to actually start reading it. And okay, so here are my thoughts. Basically, I liked this book a little less than I had expected or like hoped to like it, and that is mainly owing to it reading very, very much like a YA book, and that is because it is a YA book. So that's not a fault of the book or anything like that, but I just found it was something that I did not actively enjoy. Like usually I do not pick up YA literature anymore, and I guess it is for a reason, because I have just kind of personally grown out of that type of literature, or like the type these stories are narrated, told, or like the kind of protagonist and characters they star. So it's just not 100% my jam anymore. So that was something I was struggling with this book. It felt too much. It read too much like a YA book, and that stopped me from like liking it all that much, to be honest. Obviously, I did really appreciate this plotline of our main protagonist Georgia discovering, like learning more, figuring out her sexuality, her asexuality actually. But given the fact that it's like literally written on the back of the book, everyone knows that's what this book is about, it kind of threw me off that the first time that Georgia actually like learns about this term, like being asexual and what it is, and then like slowly figures out, oh wait, that might actually be me, that's literally only at the around halfway point of this book. And mind you, this book is long. This book is almost 450 pages long. So that just kind of also threw me off a little bit, I guess. I think within the first half of the book, a lot of stuff could have been edited out, because the first half of the book felt kind of repetitive, because it's like the same thoughts and feelings of hers coming up again and again and again. She's moving to university and she feels very out of place, but that's not only connected to her being very confused about her sexuality, but also just because she's like a kind of like introverted, shy person. So she's struggling with making friends, getting out there, getting to know people, blah, blah, blah. And so there were just like tons of scenes to reiterate that theme, I guess, of her feeling really insecure and like unhappy and this and that. But it just kept getting reiterated over 225 pages or something like that. And I think you could have condensed it just like a little bit. And only then she learns about, like via other people, about these terms, asexuality, aromanticism, and that part obviously I really appreciated. It also like taught me a whole lot, to be really honest. Like still to this day I haven't like read a official definition of any of these terms or something like that, but if before you would have asked me like, what would you say, what would you think, how would you define asexuality, I thought I would have described it as something just like someone who is in no way, shape or form interested in any of these topics of sexuality, romance. That's just not something that speaks to them on any kind of level. That's what I would have kind of like thought the term really means. But this book actually teaches us that there are, I mean, obviously there are nuances to that. And for example, Georgia, she's super into romance. She loves romance books, romance novels. She has, from when she was like a really young girl on, always like dreamt about finding the one and all of that. Like actually, she's super into romance, but then she figures out that she does not want any kind of sexual contact with anyone because it really grosses her out, and she has never actually had like a real life crush on anyone, but actually she really loves the concept of love. And obviously there are different forms of love. For example, she really loves her friends and all of that, so that becomes a topic that there are different ways to love other human beings, not just a romantic and sexual way kind of. So that was something new I definitely learned, though I guess it still left me with some questions. But like, mind you, this is not a textbook. It was not the task of this book to teach me the ins and outs of all the definitions of asexuality, aromanticism and all of that. But then actually I think Georgia ends up identifying as, or like describing herself as, asexual, aromantic. But and so like they separate these terms, sexuality and romanticism. But I would have thought that maybe she would be like asexual but still romantic, because she actually is really interested in all things romance and stuff. So that's maybe something I have not quite fully understood yet, how these two terms are defined also like separately from one another. What does it mean to be aromantic? Like with asexual, I think we can kind of like all at least vaguely imagine what that would mean, like just not being interested in having sexual intercourse with anyone, not feeling sexual feelings towards anyone. But aromanticism, I guess that's like a term that I'm not fully clear on what that means yet. Because actually how I perceive Georgia as a person, she would still, for example, maybe be interested in having like a romantic... But that's the thing though, like when I feel like romanticism so easily like swaps over into like sexuality. For example, if you said like she would still be maybe interested in having a romantic like relationship with someone, but what would that even mean? Just like a meaningful and loving outside of sexuality relationship with anyone like she has with her friends, even though of course that's not romantic. I don't know, it does get maybe a bit complicated, but then again, this is not a textbook. This book is not about 100% explaining all of these things to you. But yeah, I guess I did learn something new, but I'm also left with a few more questions about especially about the aromanticism side of things. But that's just me, and I will have to do some more research on that. But so I did enjoy the book, and because it was the first time I actually read a book that talked about asexuality, aromanticism, starred a character who is figuring out their identity within that realm. I really like that, and I really appreciated that concept, and there should definitely be more books like that out there. So that was Loveless. I did appreciate the message of the book, but just for my personal taste, it was a bit too like young adult. There you go. The third book I started this month, it was not the third book I finished this month, that is Bunny. I do not have the physical copy of it right here with me because it is still at my sister's place, or like another book I will be talking about. I do not have it right here, but I will just put up like the cover on the screen. So yeah, Bunny. For sure, the weirdest book I read this month. Maybe, definitely one of the weirdest books I read ever. Is it potentially the weirdest book? Like the number one I ever read? Honestly, possibly. So I picked this book up because of the book Leonie. She talked about it quite a lot in like a few of her videos, because it is a new like favorite book of all time that she has discovered for herself, and it sounded kind of intriguing, kind of like, okay, dark academia, but also kind of weird, and it's about all these girls and their relationships to one another. I don't know, I did not really hear a whole lot or like a whole lot specific stuff about the book before picking it up, but I heard about it a lot, and so I got intrigued, ordered it, started to read it, and oh boy, what a ride that was. Honestly, from like a third way into the book, I considered DNFing, not finishing the book, because I feel like I couldn't really handle the book. I could definitely not really appreciate it because it was just a tad too weird, a tad too freaky, a tad too what the hell is even going on here? What is the book even about? Is any of this what we're witnessing in the book actually even happening? Is this about her hallucinating stuff? Is this about kind of like supernatural world? What is going on in this book? So the bare basics I can give you as to the plot lines, the characters of the book is the following. This book's main protagonist is Samantha. She goes to this very prestigious New England college, just like the basic dark academia setting, right? She is really obsessed with this group of girls called the Bunnies. It consists of 4 girls. They're all really girly and like lovey-dovey towards one another. Like they're always like starting one another, calling each other bunny, and like hugging and giving each other kisses and being like, oh my god, you're the best bunny. They're like that. And she at the same time like hates them, makes fun of them, but she's also like super obsessed with them. And when they kind of invite her into their circle, she jumps at it, she leaps at it, and she kind of starts to become involved in their circle. And then the freaky, like, so far so good, right? That still sounds pretty straightforward. But then the freaky supernatural stuff starts happening. They do all kinds of weird rituals. And basically, I don't know if you would consider this a spoiler, but I just want to give you some details of what I mean when I call this book hella weird. So they start doing these rituals, right? And what they essentially do is they turn bunnies, actual bunnies, into creatures that kind of like look like attractive men, but they're like not fully formed men, not just, I mean, especially like that, they don't have that, you know, but also like other things, they don't have like real hands, and they can't really speak. They're not human creatures that they create, but they're like bunnies turned into these weird creations, and they have them like doing all kinds of stuff, just like being their servants. But then they like freak out, and then they kill them and like chop them up with axes. Yes, that's actually what happens in this book. And they keep doing that, and then it's like Samantha's turn for the first time to try to turn a bunny into one of these creatures herself. And at first it looks like it's not really working out, and she feels super bad because it's like, oh my god, these others can do it, but I can't. I'm such a failure and all of that. But then this dude pops up, and they actually think, okay, this might actually be Samantha's creation, but he's like the best creation that has ever been created. Like he actually looks and behaves like a normal human being. But then he starts like manipulating, kind of like terrorizing the bunnies, and Samantha like starts something with her best friend, and she gets jealous, and it's what is this book, honestly? So basically that's kind of like what's going on in this book. And like heading into it, I only heard about it being weird. But here's the thing that I don't like in any kind of book. When I head into a book thinking it is taking place in our like normal real life world, and then supernatural stuff starts happening, I don't know if that's supposed to be telling me that our main protagonist is going crazy, is imagining stuff, having hallucinations and all of that, or if that is the world this is set in. I never like that when that happens, when I think I'm heading into one kind of thing, and then something happens that basically throws all of my expectations overboard. And I don't know if that is just because this is actually taking place in like a supernatural kind of world, or is it because our main protagonist is going crazy? I don't know. I can't, like, even with finishing the book, I cannot give you an answer to this question. Things are not being explained. So if you like this kind of like freaky, there are also like horror-y aspects to it, I'm not gonna lie. It felt like a really freaky, horror-y fever dream. This book is a fever dream, and personally, this kind of content does not give me anything. it leaves me feeling absolutely nothing other than what is this? What is it supposed to tell me? Is this even supposed to tell anyone anything? I guess with my taste and things, I cannot appreciate stories like that. So personally, I did not like it, so to say. I was just like, what is this book? I contemplated not finishing it for so long, but then I kept reading and I kept reading just like a couple of pages at a time. And I actually did stop reading it for like 2 weeks because I thought, okay, I'm not going to continue, like I'm not going to finish this book. But then at the end of the month, I actually did end up picking it up again, but only because I really do not like not finishing books, and I only finished it because I wanted to finish it, not because I actually was like interested or like intrigued by the story or like how it was going to continue. That's funny. Honestly, I cannot give you any kind of information other than that about this book. If this sounds like something that you might be interested, go for it. Yeah, I don't really know what that would tell me about someone's taste if they're like, yeah, I like these kind of books. Like, what does that mean? You like illogical, irrational, freaky, hallucinogenic kind of stories, but like, why would you like something like that? Like, what does it give you? What intrigues you about it? I don't know. I would actually be interested. Like, if you have read this book and you liked it, like, definitely comment down below why you liked it, because I genuinely find myself I can't come up with a reason why someone would like a story like that. Anyway, so that was funny. Moving on, I have read and tried to solve yet another Agatha Christie novel, Agatha Christie's Dead Man's Folly. I have an entire dedicated video to it, so you can go check that out. Was I able to solve it? Was I not able to solve it? I don't know. You're gonna have to watch the video. I really enjoyed this one. This felt very summery and chill because it's taking place at like this country estate, and it's about a murder hunt being organized as a form of entertainment for a fair. So instead of a treasure hunt, they have like a murder hunt planned. But then the person who was supposed to play the victim actually turns up dead. Oops. So Hercule Poirot obviously is on the premises and has to try and solve the case. And I tried to do so too. Was it successful? You're gonna have to see for yourself. But it was a really good time. I actually really liked the vibe, the setting of the book, because it felt really fitting for like May. I don't know. Now we're heading into the books that I read while I was traveling. The first one I do not have with me right here because it's also at my sister's place, is The Christie Affair. I had heard about this because I think in like March or April it was a book of the month pick, and obviously I got immediately intrigued by the title because I was like, oh, is this about Agatha Christie? Sign me up, right? Though actually that was not my first reaction. Why did I even say that? I was straight up lying to you guys, because I heard about the book, and okay, it is a fictionalized account of what this author has come up with, what they think happened in those 11 days that Agatha Christie went missing. Now, if you're not aware with Agatha Christie's biography, this actually happened. This is not made up. This is straight on facts. Agatha Christie in her life disappeared for 11 days and never commented on it. No one found out ever what happened in those 11 days, where she went, what happened, why she disappeared. When she came back, she only said that she doesn't remember about anything. So this is like a real life mystery. Because it is a real life mystery about a real life murder mystery writer, of course, that leaves tons of rooms for speculation. So I thought this book was gonna be like another murder mystery in itself, and the author having come up with like this crazy adventure that Agatha went on when she like went missing for those 11 days. But it wasn't like that, kind of like at all. First of all, this story, I would say, is only like 50% about Agatha. The other half of the book is about Nan O'Brien. Is that her name? Archie Christie's mistress. So right before Agatha in real life disappeared, her husband told her that he wanted to leave her, he wants a divorce because he had a mistress, this Nan O'Brien woman. And this book is half written out of Nan's perspective, and it's about like her life and her past and all of that. And only, maybe not even half. Honestly, maybe it's more like 70% or 60-70% about the mistress Nan, and only the other remaining percent about Agatha and why she disappeared for those days. And their storylines are like very tightly connected. What happens within those 11 days, why people are doing what they're doing and all of that. But it's not a murder mystery for sure. It is not a suspense novel or like a thriller or anything of that kind at all. It just very calmly tells the story of what is actually happening, or like what actually happened in those 11 days, how Nan and Agatha are connected, what happened in Nan's past, what Agatha is doing in those 11 days. But yeah, it was in that sense definitely not what I thought this book was going to be. I thought it would come up with this crazy murder mystery adventure that explains why Agatha Christie had to disappear for 11 days, but it's not like that at all. I enjoyed it, but what I struggled with, and that was something I thought I would struggle with, is because Agatha Christie was a real life human being, right? And not only have I read a lot of her work, but I have also read her autobiography, the account of her life that she wrote herself on her life. And so basically what I know actually about Agatha Christie's life and who she was as a human being, at least the things that I read in between the lines, basically reading her autobiography, it maybe did not really overlap all that much with who Agatha Christie was in this fictionalized account of her life, which of course is fair, because there should also be like a kind of separation. Like, this is not an actual real life account of what happened in those 11 days. It is a piece of fiction, so it is valid that they also like changed maybe like Agatha as a character, though I could believe that maybe it was the author's goal to make Agatha actually, and like also all the other people in her life, to actually like have them be and like behave as the actual real life people did. But then again, we don't have that much information, especially about like this mistress. I don't think we actually know anything at all about like her character, who she was, so that part definitely was all made up, I would say. Archie Christie comes off really, really badly in the book, and I'm not saying that out of a place of wanting to defend him. I don't know anything basically about him other than that he did leave Agatha like because he was cheating on her, wanted to leave her for another woman and all of that. I don't know if he was as bad a character as he is being portrayed in this fictionalized account. I can't judge that. No one really can, I guess. So yeah, I don't know. So it was okay, but as an Agatha Christie enthusiast, I guess it also felt weird reading a fictionalized account of this like real life person that I know a lot about, because I have read her work and her autobiography. So that just kind of made me feel like icky, like don't come up with stuff about this person that actually existed. It would maybe be like if someone wrote a book, let's say, about your mom, and you know your mom in real life and what she's like, who she is, what she does, etc. And then in the book she would be like a different person. It would just feel kind of like weird reading about your mother being like a different person in this book than the person you know she is in real life. Now, obviously, Agatha Christie is not my mother, and I don't know her as well as I do my mother, but I just gave that as kind of like a parallel to make you understand what I maybe kind of felt weird about in aspects of this book. But it wasn't like a big thing, but just like in general, it was like, don't mess with Agatha Christie. Not that this book was messing with Agatha Christie, but just like that. So okay, I still liked it, but it was not what I expected. And I also didn't like love it, but that's okay. So that was that. Moving on to the second to last book I read this month. I did not fully read this, to be honest, another Agatha Christie, but Agatha Christie in Spanish. I picked this up when I was in Madrid. This is a short story collection, and the biggest short story, it's like literally half of the book, is Tres Ratones Ciegos, which means 3 blind mice. And that actually is the short story that Agatha Christie's world famous theater play, The Mousetrap, is based on. And now, to be really honest, when I read this, I did not know that there was a short story that The Mousetrap was based on. I always thought that Agatha wrote The Mousetrap just as a play in itself. But then I read the story and was like, hold on, this is The Mousetrap. And only then I realized, okay, so I guess there already was a short story that she only turned into a play for the theater. Didn't know that. You never stop learning, I guess. And I also read the second short story in this, which is a Miss Marple, really short story about her finding a treasure, basically. I was not entirely sure whether I had read that short story before. I'm not sure if like some of these short stories are also part of the Final Cases Miss Marple book collection, or like the 13 Problems ones, because those two books too are short story collections, so there might be some overlap there. I have not yet read the other short stories in this book. I might still do that like throughout the month of June, but because it is in Spanish, like reading in Spanish does not come as naturally to me as reading in English, so it is kind of like exhausting at times. So right now I'm taking a break, but it was a good time reading the original basis for The Mousetrap, a play which I've already seen, I think twice, or like I think even 3 times. So, and I've seen it 3 times without knowing it was based on a short story, which is kind of ridiculous and embarrassing considering I know so much about Agatha Christie, yet I didn't know this very, I guess, a well-known fact. But anyway, now I know it. And now, last but not least, maybe some of you are going to be kind of excited about me having finally, I guess, read this. I read the 8 Detectives by Alex Pavesi. I think a couple of you guys had recommended this book to me, or had told me about it and how you like really liked the storyline and everything. And I had seen this a ton of bookstores, but never picked it up until this month. The setup of this book is kind of funny, in case you don't know. So basically, the story of this book is about an author and an editor sitting together, going through the book of short stories that this author wants to publish. One chapter, we read one of the short stories that are supposed to be published, and then in the next chapter, we witness the author and the editor talking about this story we just read and how he came up with it and blah, blah, blah. Because basically this author, he approached murder mysteries from a mathematical point of view and came up with this theory, so to say, of the ingredients that a murder mystery is consisted of and the permutations of the rules he has set up, basically. And each of these 7 short stories is supposed to be an example of these permutations. Yeah, I think that's fair to say like that. In the end of the book, there are a ton of twists and turns. One of them, like, I would say maybe like the first one, the very obvious one, I did see coming, because we get clues for at least one of the twists in almost every chapter of the editor and the author talking to one another. But they're like, there's more than one twist in this book, so even if you see that one coming, there's still a bunch of other ones that might keep you on your toes. At first, when I headed into this book, I was a bit maybe surprised, because it wasn't quite what I thought it was going to be, because I didn't know it had the setup of us being told basically these 7 short stories and then them talking about it. And that is a nice concept, of course, but I didn't find it to be all that riveting, or I don't know. But then the ending came in and there are all these twists and turns in it, though. Like in the back of the book, it is called a thriller, and I wouldn't call it a thriller, so don't maybe head into it expecting suspense all that much. I did enjoy this aspect of having these permutations of murder mystery theory being exemplified in these 7 short stories. So actually, why is this book called 8 Detectives when there are 7? I mean, is she supposed to be the detective of the real life? I don't know. I think there could have been maybe like a better, more fitting title for this book, because 8 Detectives, is it maybe a bit misleading, or maybe not that fitting actually, but I mean, it's fine. I enjoyed this book. Do not get me wrong. I liked it. It was original in the sense that I have never read a book where someone came up with these like mathematical rules for murder mysteries and wrote short stories around the permutations of the rules. So that was original, but the 7 stories we read, they are in themselves not that original. Maybe if you have read a lot of murder mysteries, then by default you already know a lot of these permutations of the rules of murder mysteries. For example, one of the stories being told in this book is basically just like Agatha Christie's and then there were none. And in the following chapter, where the author and the editor talk about this short story, he also says like, this is like an homage to my favorite murder mystery of all time, and that is like obviously referencing Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. But because I have read And Then There Were None, reading that short story, it didn't like blow my mind, because it was like the first time I had read something like that. But because I have, I don't know, it still like was a nice story, but it didn't leave me being like, oh my god, wow, so original, never read anything like that, because I have read stuff like that. And same goes for a lot of the other short stories and like permutations we talk about in this book. I have witnessed them or like seen plot lines like that in other books, in other short stories. And so these short stories, they didn't leave me baffled. If you're like new to the murder mystery genre, then maybe this book blows you off your feet, because there are like tons of special examples of how a story could end that you have never encountered anywhere else before, and your mind is blown basically. But because I would say I was like familiar with all the kinds of ending that this book presented, it still was like a lot of fun to read the short stories and to read the novel in itself, but it didn't leave my mind blown. But that's okay, I still enjoyed it. But some of you, I think, had said that like this was like so original, like your favorite book and stuff like that. And again, like especially if you maybe have not read as much murder mystery fiction as I have, and some of these stories, they came to you as very original because it was the first time you had an ending like that, I can totally see how your mind would be blown. But because I have so much experience with the genre, none of this was like the first time of me hearing it, so it didn't leave me like baffled or like starstruck or whatever. I did enjoy it, but wasn't crazy about it either, I would say. So there you go. Those and like 2 more books that I don't have with me right here are all the books I read in May. Pretty solid, I would say. A lot of different genres. I really enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed this super long video, and I hope you had some good reads in May as well. And we're gonna see you in the next video. Bye!